The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing our Savior, overcoming burdens, achieving dreams. Together we can succeed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to season 16 of The Paula Show. Tonight we're speaking about sports psychology. It's a very uncommon career choice for an Antiguan and Barbudan, but it's exciting. Conrad, a young right-handed batsman, was injured in a vehicular accident. His right hand was severely injured. Conrad became consistently frustrated and suffered from sleep disturbance. He mostly withdrew to his bedroom, refusing to engage with his family and friends. What are we going to do about Conrad? Because we can't allow him to stay there wallowing in his suffering. Launee Richards, sports psychologist, will tell us exactly what she would like to do with Conrad, and she'll also be sharing information about her studies and all the benefits that we Antiguans and Barbudans can derive from sports psychology. So stay with us on The Paula Show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Thank you for staying with us on The Paula Show. Remember to watch The Paula Show via CTV Channel 2 on Tuesday nights at 9, and Sundays there's a rebroadcast at 1 in the afternoon. Tonight my guest is Launee Richards. She's a sports psychologist. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight, Launee.
Thank you for having me.
I notice you're not wearing your glasses.
I'm doing something different.
All right. And you're the daughter of Lorene Richards.
Yes.
How is she doing?
She's doing very well.
All right. We're going to make Lorene proud tonight, right?
Of course.
All right. Very good. In the future, I hope to see you as a guest on ESPN working with WICB, West Indies Cricket Board, La Liga, the English Premier League. Girl, I'm sending you places. And the Olympics organization. These are dreams you have for yourself?
I do. Yes, they are dreams that I had for myself. And when I started first, I had envisioned myself working for even a regional team. And I thought that I would, in the future be able to become the sports psychologist for these teams.
Listen, don't lose hope. It's possible. You have youth on your side, good looks, brilliant mind. It can work. In a nutshell, how would you describe sports psychology?
Okay, so simply put, sports psychology looks at the impact of the mind on physical activity, exercise, and sports. And then it also looks at the impact of sports, physical activity, and exercise on the mind.
So it's all about the mind.
Yes.
And there are two types of sports psychology, I understand. One educational, one clinical.
Yes. So there is a more clinical route to sports psychology. And then there is what I would say, I guess, like the more common route, which kind of looks at it from a more sort of counseling perspective, and it doesn't delve into persons with additional mental health issues.
Okay. So one can say that sports psychology deals primarily with the mind, but the coaches and the team technicians and these persons, they deal mostly with the physical aspect of sports.
Yes.
What's the feedback you receive when you say to people, I'm a sports psychologist?
I didn't know we had one of those. That's normally the response that I get, I would say. Or it would be one of support where, we definitely need something like that in Antigua and Barbuda. And so it's generally positive. It's either one of surprise or one of positivity.
I was so curious. When you said it, I said, what? And then I wanted to know, what do you do? What's happening? And then I said, you have to be on the Paula Show.
Yes.
We have to talk about sports psychology. Okay. I'm thinking about med students in university. They have to work with cadavers, deceased bodies, in order to understand the body parts and all of that. You need, on the other hand, live minds, because sports psychology is definitely about living
Yes.
people. So, I mean, how did you engage in your studies with these live minds? How did they help you to complete your studies, your assignments? Yeah.
So while I was doing my master's, we looked at, or we had the opportunity to do psychoeducational workshops as well as one-on-one interventions or sessions with athletes. And so that really helped me to get the exposure to dealing with athletes. And even after I came back, I would have done psychoeducational workshops. I would have done group sessions, those kind of things. And so that has just been consistent, you know, building, I guess, my resume of sorts.
Yes.
And so I've had a really good experience in understanding the minds of persons. I also worked with the Referee Association, or more recently. And so for me, I really enjoy that because it's a different aspect of sports. You hear about the athletes,
Yes.
you hear about the coach, but then you very, very rarely hear about the referee. And that has just been a really interesting experience for
Yeah,
me.
when I think about referees, I just think of people running up and down with a whistle.
Yes,
But I
yes,
guess
yes.
there's a measure of technicality
Yes,
to their
there
work.
is, and it's really intense. I would dare
Yeah.
say that they are, I would maybe not say more than,
Yeah.
but they train just as hard as athletes do.
Yes.
And I think that for me was the most surprising thing that I found out when working with them.
When I think of referees, I'm telling you, the whistle running up and down.
Yes.
But I appreciate them when Chelsea deserves a penalty and the ref says penalty, because when you deserve a penalty or some other call that will give you an advantage and the ref doesn't see it, then you know he's the most unfavorable person in this experience.
Yes, yes, and that's where the
That's a
mind and
huge
body comes in.
responsibility.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. As an adult, I played netball and I was a shooter. One night, I don't know what happened. I twisted my ankle at the Lions playfield. Pretend. I'm here, cast on my leg, and I have all these responsibilities that I mentioned. Talk to me. You're the sports psychologist.
So we're looking at what? What is it that you would like to happen, or what are your expectations from the session?
My expectation from the session, I am feeling really downcast. I'm thinking about my job. I'm thinking about not being able to be active with my children. And all I wanted to do was have some fun recreationally. And this is a big deal. Suppose my ankle doesn't heal and I'm not able to walk in my heels again.
Okay, your heels.
Yes.
Okay, so your concern is that you would like to go back to the sport, or you want to be able to cope with the situation of being in a cast?
I want help with the situation of being in a cast because I'm not returning to netball. I know that.
Oh my.
No, I'll do something else. I'll walk and I'll run.
Okay.
But I'm not returning to netball.
Okay.
Bad memories.
Okay. Well, we'll deal with that other aspect a little later. But in terms of the coping strategies, what we can do is that we could find some coping strategies that are good for you, and some things that you like. It could be some level of maybe a little bit of physical activity, nothing that requires you to move your leg, but maybe something that allows you to just do some movement, so you don't feel as
My
if you're
upper body?
yes, so you don't feel as though you're just stationary all the time. And of course, you know, things like breathing exercises, relaxation exercises as well help you to sort of feel a little less stressed about the situation that you're in.
Well, I'm beginning to feel a little better. But I guess I won't know if I'll be able to return to my heels until after the cast is removed.
Yes, but since we've gone back, we can fast track, and we realize that you did very well with coping. You coped very well with the situation.
Oh, very well with the situation. That was just a little demo here of what Launee Richards is capable of doing. Thank you very much for watching The Paula Show. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Stay with us, please. Lots more coming up. In the 2019 NBA Finals, I was so scared because Kevin Durant, my boy, he played for the Golden State Warriors. He was injured. He underwent surgery. 2 days later, he began his recovery and rehabilitation. and they thought that he would be sidelined for a year. Can you imagine the emotions in this young man's mind? Because although he was severely injured, he expected not to retire, but post-injury, he had to return to the game.
I think one of the emotions that one can experience is fear. Also,
Fear?
yes, fear of a re-injury. That's a really big issue, especially when it comes to athletes who have been injured. I mean, there's some athletes who really don't care. I remember once I was on a bench with a team, and one of the persons, I think they broke something, and when they were at the hospital, they were like, "Oh well, I'm gonna go out to play," and I was like, "You don't, they didn't even care. They weren't even afraid that they would injure themselves
And
again."
he wanted to really return.
Yeah, he was
with
ready.
the broken limb.
Yeah, he was ready. He was ready to come to practice, and he wanted to find out how soon he could come. And that just really kind of shocked me because he was still in the hospital. You understand? So that was a really interesting experience for me. So you have those persons who are not necessarily very bothered by it.
Yes.
But especially you have persons who might, have a little bit of fear, especially if you have been injured before, or you are a bit older, and so the stakes are a little higher, right?
It takes a lot longer for
Yes,
you to heal.
yes, that physical process is a little longer. You have worry, of course, about your salary, what happens to your position in the team. If you're out, there's always somebody who's ready and willing to take your place. And I think also there could be some persons who are just relieved, really, who just want that opportunity to kind of just relax and rest and kind of just, take a break as well.
I wasn't thinking about relaxing and taking a break. I was like that person who's broken and would really want to return to work.
Yes.
When am I going to get this off my leg?
Yes.
And when it eventually was removed, I felt like I was female Samson. I just stepped on my leg and almost fell over.
Yeah.
It was 1 weak limb. Maybe after a couple of days I could gingerly walk on it, but I thought I would be able to just, trample on.
No.
I don't like to be injured at all. I thought that you would be able to prescribe medication as a complement to the motivation and everything else that you're doing, the therapy, to get your athletes back on track. But you're saying to me that you're not able to prescribe?
No, prescriptions are generally left to psychiatrists, persons who are MDs, who are doctors, and they're the ones who are able to prescribe. I know clinical psychologists in certain areas, not necessarily all, but in certain areas they're also able to prescribe as well, to an extent.
Okay.
Right? So yes, so that prescription drugs are not for really any other field in psychology. So we deal with more with techniques, strategies that allow you to improve.
And if there's need for meds,
you would refer the person. Yes,
Yes,
a psychiatrist or to a doctor if it's something that's more physical.
So psychology then is what they consider to be allied. They call it allied health, where you collaborate with registered MDs to better help the patient.
Yes, yes.
To date, the Olympics will be held in Japan from July 23rd to August 8th. I say to date because there are rising cases of coronavirus in Japan, and they're trying to hold on to ensure that the Olympics happen.
Yeah.
I really don't know if it's going to happen. So in addition to the team managers, coaches, and physiotherapists, you would recommend the inclusion of sports psychologists.
Definitely. It's something I think that's very beneficial, especially when you have a sporting team. You should always have a set of persons or a set of persons who are related to sports to accompany teams so that they're able to have that support. It could be a nutritionist, obviously a psychologist, a physiotherapist. There are many other aspects of sports that are there that we tend not to necessarily delve into, and so you tend to have the support staff that you have tend to be like the common physiotherapist, the coach, and the administrator, administrators.
Now, there's a pandemic in Japan, and I can imagine the athletes, okay, ready, set, go, I'm ready to run, I'm ready to, engage in whatever activity is required of me. But at the back of my mind, I don't want to contract this virus. So that's added pressure, you would
Yeah.
imagine, on these athletes.
Yes, definitely. I know that it's something that I've even seen. There are persons in different competitions who would have pulled out because of the threat of the coronavirus. And so it is definitely something that is worrisome for persons, especially those who might have a fear of contracting COVID. And so that's that fear compounded with the possibility or the sort of having to balance your career versus your fear. It's quite a difficult space to be in.
And if they invited you to the Olympics, you know, you just never know. Don't rule out anything to be a sports psychologist. How would you handle those types of situation? An athlete, my favorite, track and field.
Okay.
And so this track and field athlete, he's, you know, hyping a little bit. I'm here, ready, set, go. But I have some issues that might affect my performance. What would you recommend to him or to her?
Okay. So one of the things, or the common misconceptions, are that people sort of equate a sports psychologist to a doctor, whereby you go to the doctor, you tell the doctor, I have a sore throat, I have a runny nose, I have this. They say, okay, you have the flu. Right? When you're dealing with a psychologist, it's not a one-time visit and a diagnosis.
Oh.
It's an ongoing it's an ongoing evaluation.
Consultation and all of that.
Right. And so you can't just determine that this is that, because there's only so much that you're going to tell me in one session, right? You know, you have to get comfortable. You have to then start to explore something, and then you say, okay, this is caused by something else. And so when you're looking at that cause and effect, or even a relationship between issues, it takes a while.
It takes time.
Right. And so I wouldn't be able to say, okay, well, this is what you should do. I could, however, provide you with some sort of strategy to help you feel a little bit more comfortable. But in terms of dealing with the issue as a whole, no, that would definitely take some
time.
Yes, that would take some time before going to the Olympics.
So, in other words, if a sports psychologist is attached to a particular Olympic team, it's not like a chaperone that you just accompany the person on the flight and ensure that the person has proper accommodations and all of that. You would therefore have to be associated with this person for some time before the actual Olympics.
Yes, so you have to build a
Create a
relationship,
relationship,
right, with
right.
the individual. The same thing that with teams, you don't just put 11 people together and say, hey, let's play. You expect to have some level of cohesion, and the same way you expect that cohesion with the team is the same way you need to build that level of that relationship with your client as well.
Because I reckon, though, that in order for them to speak with you, the sports psychologist, candidly, they would have to know you.
Yes.
Generally, people don't share their deepest, darkest
with persons
secrets
that they don't
with
know.
people that you don't know. There's always a fear. She's going to tell somebody, or she's going to judge me.
Yes, and psychology is still new. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you also have to get over that fear as well.
I'm looking at these athletes and I'm thinking, this couch consultation is not going to be suitable for some of these people. Let's talk about it when we return, because when we think of psychology, we usually think of the leather couch.
Yes.
But I suppose in sports psychology, it's something else. You'll tell us about that in the next segment. Stay with us, please. Psychology, you're always lying on a couch and feeling relaxed. But for athletes, I'm not too sure about that. Launee Richards is here. She's a sports psychologist, and we're speaking about her career and also about her studies tonight. And we're even getting some recommendations of how to relieve the stress, because sports psychology is not only about athletes, it's for the entire population. Stay with us. We'll be right back. If you had an opportunity to work with an athlete, which one would you choose? Usain Bolt, Tiger Woods, CJ Green, or one of your choice?
I think I would choose CJ Green.
Just because he's local?
Yes, of course, because
Look
he's
at
local.
you. Okay, so patriotic. That's nice. I love
course.
CJ, but I love my guy Usain Bolt.
That's okay. I feel like he's been on top, you know, he's already
Yes.
been the best. And he's also retired. So
But
I think
even though
that
he's
CJ would
retired,
be quite.
even though he's retired, would he still have need for a sports psychologist?
Well, it's kind of, sports psychology tends to be more focused on persons who are currently involved in sports. It does help persons who are transitioning out of sports as well, which is one of the benefits of it. So you have those persons like him, who become sort of athletics, and their life outside of athletics might be really strange. And so it helps them to sort of find more meaning outside of sports. But he seems to be doing pretty well. So I feel as though he's okay.
He's okay.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
you also studied exercise. So
Yes.
it's sports psychology and you studied exercise as
Yeah,
well.
so it's sports and exercise psychology.
You would be useful to the entire population. Because I was so shocked when I read this. The practice of sports psychology is also useful beyond athletics. Sports psychologist skills are increasingly sought out by professionals in high-stress jobs. I need your service, such as surgeons, firefighters, and performing artists. In fact, the U.S. the Army, is now the country's largest employer of sports psychology professionals who help soldiers to learn to focus in combat and deal with stressful situations. So sports psychologists are also in the Army. You have a lot of options.
Yes, sports psychology is very broad, and because it focuses on performance, it therefore means that the skills are transferable to quite a number of sectors.
When I saw professionals in high-stress jobs, I said, what? That sounds like a regular psychologist. But a sports psychologist, I suppose when we hear sports psychologist, we just automatically think, okay, she's for athletes, so we
Yes.
don't need her service. But you're well-rounded. You're good for a lot of stuff. The area of exercise is very important because now I'm recognizing that you can work in gyms and with nutritionists and dietitians and even broaden the scope more.
Exercise psychology is probably one of the lesser known aspects of sports psychology, and so they are complementary. So generally what happens is that someone who studies both sport and exercise psychology, they choose whether they wish to go into sports or into exercise, but you can do both. And so exercise psychology focuses on persons who want to exercise and who also want to engage in physical activity. And of course, it looks at maybe some of the blocks. So a lot of us have mental blocks. We have this, or we're going to start the gym and in the new year, that New Year's resolution. And even though
have a
they
conversation with your mother and tell her that you are embarrassing me on the Paula show.
Oh, not at all.
I
Not at all.
did say that this year, and just today I said, Lord have mercy, it's nearly June.
And that is okay because the
It's
time,
okay?
Yeah, of course. The time to start is tomorrow. It doesn't
I
have
like
to
that.
be the first. It doesn't have to be the
I
first
like
of
that.
January.
So I missed out on the first half.
You
Make
didn't-
the
no,
last
you-
half of the year work.
No, you
for
didn't
me.
miss out on the first half. You
What
started
happened?
when you were ready. When you were mentally ready and prepared to do so, you started.
have
And so
mercy.
when you're
Your
ready,
little psychologist. Because you're
When
making
you
me
were ready-
feel better now.
yeah, because when you're ready, then you're able to commit fully to it, right? And I'm sure you realize, okay, well, I'm just gonna do this, and
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna walk today.
Yeah.
But when you're in the mode, you are able to then create a pattern, and you actually create a
I'm
habit.
working for a month and it's
Exactly,
it's
it's not-
feeling good.
Of course. And then you start walking, and then you start eating, and then all of a sudden the fries don't seem so appealing because you've just finished walking. So all of those things kind of come together. And as exercise psychologist is really useful in that regard.
So you can work in a gym. When these people in the gym are talking about, I have a personal trainer, you're even way above that.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm above that because the concept or the purpose of going to the gym is to lose weight. And if you're an individual who needs assistance mentally, not in a bad way, but you just need
Yes.
additional support. You can,
Motivation.
right, you can seek an exercise psychologist.
Okay.
Some persons are pretty good at motivating themselves, or they have trainers who are very good at motivating them. So they may not necessarily need an exercise psychologist, but it would be useful for things like MBS and other
Oh
corporations.
yes, the walks.
Right.
And large groups of people.
So large corporations who focus on health. So an exercise psychologist is really good because it helps you to understand why persons are committed or they're not committed to staying physically active, and therefore it helps for you to kind of put a plan in place in order for you to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We've identified this is the problem, and we're going to create a program to encourage persons to be physically active, not just do walks, but what else do they need? Do they need a community center? Do they need somebody to check in? Do we need to do peer support groups? So those are things that you investigate to understand how we can get persons to be more committed to being physically active.
And even as you're speaking, I'm thinking of another area that will be suitable for you. Senior Citizen Center.
Yes.
Like
yes.
some people say old age homes. No, I'm going to say senior citizen facilities, fines, and some of these homes where the elderly are housed. Not because they're there and they're getting older means that they should not be active. It might keep them healthier for longer.
Yes, it definitely could, especially for persons who are not necessarily feeling as though they want to be physically active because they figure, oh, well, I'm already old, you know.
Some people say stuff like that is true.
It is true.
I'm going to see my maker.
Yes, you know, but you know, you can have somebody come in. It doesn't necessarily have to be a one-on-one session.
Yes.
But you can have somebody come in and kind of just find out, and just provide them with a little bit of support.
I like that. I really do like that. The WHO reports that non-communicable diseases kill 41 million people each year. That's equivalent to 71% of all deaths globally. Non-communicable diseases. Where do you fit into that?
Right. So as I would have mentioned about associations or organizations that focus on health, the exercise psychologist comes in because we're then able to say, okay, you have a non-communicable disease. We're looking at persons, let's say, with diabetes.
Diabetes, that's a big one.
With persons with hypertension, why don't they exercise, right? What are some of the barriers that are in place? So we're not just looking at providing opportunities, we're looking at the barriers, things that prevent them
getting into
from,
our minds.
Yes, things that prevent you or dissuade you from participating in physical activity. So that is, you know, that's definitely very important because we know that physical activity helps to reduce the risk of non-communicable diseases.
And when we speak of physical activities, we're also thinking of like gardening.
Yes.
Because everybody thinks you have to go to the gym to be physically active, but gardening, housework.
Yes. So what you want to do is just move. Right?
Move.
Yes.
That's important.
So exercises, it's a specific amount, there's a specific intensity. Physical activity looks at just movement. So as you said, gardening, you can do the occasional hike.
Swimming.
You can swimming. You could even just walk. You park your car from one end of town and just walk down the road to Heritage Key. You know, that's the level of physical activity. Instead of trying to find the closest spot, we're all guilty. I'm guilty. Trying to find the closest spot.
Instead of trying to park immediately in front of the entrance.
Just walk.
Park all the way.
Yes, and just walk over there, and that is physical activity.
I like where you're going. I'm now peeling away the mind and realizing that it's not that some persons may not want to engage in physical activity or physical exercise, but it's just that there are barriers that prevent them from achieving their goals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There are even models that look at that. The health belief model looks at the barriers versus the benefits. And if the benefits don't necessarily outweigh the barriers, then you find the person not making any sort of move to make a change to their health situation.
Oh boy. So I end this segment. Not money, not a super job, not a state-of-the-art vehicle or sophisticated property. Movement and eating healthy foods are essential to living a good quality life.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes, definitely.
I read books, I watch movies, and oftentimes it's the couch, the couch, the couch. Relax on the couch, and then the person starts talking and bearing their soul. But for athletes, that seems a little bit,
Yeah, it's not necessarily the
unlikely.
idea. Yes, you're right. It's not necessarily the scenario you would
Yeah.
you would envision.
Yeah.
That kind of came about more from when psychology first started, where persons were actually sitting on a couch, and so we have since definitely evolved past the couch. You don't even have to do it in a room if you'd like. You can do it outdoors. I've
the
had
beach?
sessions outdoors. Yes, I've had sessions at the beach or outdoors, and so it's really you can find a nice outdoor space because people are quite comfortable. It's relaxing to be on the beach and to feel the sun and to hear
Can you do it
the
walking?
waves. You can do it walking as well if you'd like.
Hiking
right?
and so?
No, that service
to
is
be
not
relaxed.
offered. Yes.
She said that service is
No,
not offered.
that's not a part of the package. But if you'd like, I mean, you can hike on your own and engage in relaxing
So sessions
behavior.
can be done at the beach, the park.
Yes.
You know, not necessarily on a couch, but in a
Yes.
relaxing environment.
Yes. A and safe, relaxing environment is good.
Training facilities, a gym. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Definitely.
Do you have to touch the patients?
Nope.
No
There's
touching.
No touching involved.
Imagine, let's say, a patient that is physically and mentally trying to be excellent, and that person falls short of the mark quite often. What would you say to that person?
I think we need to investigate what the mark is. And
Sometimes we set too high a mark.
yeah, sometimes we set these goals that they look very good. You know, we want to run a marathon by the end of the year, and you don't even walk to your car.
Oh, no!
You know, and so we want to ensure that the goals are, you know, we have those SMART goals. I'm sure they're pretty common now. You know, they're measured, but they also have to be attainable. And sometimes we forget about that aspect.
I
If
want to
we're going
climb Mount Everest.
Right, and I'm sure you can.
You
But-
serious?
I'm sure you
That's
could.
attainable?
I think so, but you would have to train. You also have to put a time to it. Are you going to do it in the next 2 years? Because you'd also have to train for it, you know, get acclimatized, all of those things would be put into place. I know they have, they've had, at least I would say, senior citizens who have climbed Mount Everest. So I know you're not in that
Listen.
you're not, we're close to that
Okay,
category.
let's
so
just
you
get
have,
that straight.
So you have time on your side to
And
train.
youth.
Yes, to train to reach that goal.
Oh,
So we
boy.
can, you know, we set those goals that we can
Yeah.
actually reach. And of course, if you want to do something specific like bodybuilding, then you have a coach, right? And you speak to your coach. And that's one of the things that are really important, especially when you're dealing with athletes and sports persons, is that you need to also set these goals with your fitness instructor because they're the ones that would sort of have an idea of what your limitations are. Also your health issues, because those can also be a barrier.
I can understand, therefore, why sometimes people use performance-enhancing drugs. Because here it is, you're trying your best to be excellent. You're physically fit and mentally you're equally fit. But you keep missing the mark. And so you feel that you have to get some assistance to help you to reach your goal.
Performing enhancing drugs, they aren't, well, you can't use them, really. I wouldn't even say they're not advisable. You shouldn't use them because they're illegal. And it's a balance of, do I improve today or lose my career?
I'm not saying that people ought to.
I understand.
But I'm just saying that I can understand why people would use performance-enhancing drugs because you keep missing the mark. So what else are you going to do? Because you can't try anymore.
You can try some more. And
But
you
you've
can
reached your optimal performance.
You don't know that you've reached your optimal performance.
Oh, we don't know when we've reached it?
No, I mean, you may not know if you have reached it because it could be, do you need another coach? Do you need to engage in different types of training sessions? Something that's suitable for maybe your body type or for the areas that you need to improve on? Are you now at a level of frustration? Because when you become frustrated, it becomes very difficult for you to do anything right. You know, anything you do is that, oh, well, you have a very negative perception of what has taken place. So there are other things that you can do. There are other areas that you can explore
Maybe you can just
before
make
giving
a
up.
shift.
Yeah, you can make a shift as well.
Total shift.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of track and field, you could cycle. You could do
Yeah,
something else.
right. Maybe you may want to run, or you may want to just to be active, and your aim is to maybe kind of just run the fastest. So yes, track and field would be ideal. You could become a football player. That same speed and that stamina is still needed in that sport.
As long as you move.
Yeah, as long as you move. And it also depends on if it's competitive or recreational as well.
And I understand what you're saying about illegal, and some people might say it's an unfair advantage as well. And when I look at what the consequences of doping, Lance Armstrong, cycling, he won 7 Tour de France titles between 1999 and 2005, and he was stripped of all.
Yep.
7. And he had cancer too. So when I heard, okay, he had cancer, and he's just winning year after year after year, I did wonder, is he using something? But you don't want to be judgmental. He could be a strong young man, or it could be that he trained vigorously. So I didn't want to take that from him. But I have to say, I wasn't really surprised. This one surprised me, though. Marion Jones. I loved Marion Jones. She was a track and field athlete, and she was imprisoned for 6 months, and she was on 2 years probation and supervised release just because of doping. And then I'm sure you would have heard about tennis, Maria Sharapova, and then this guy Justin Gatlin, track and field. It seems as if the more intense the sport, it's the more the athletes lean towards performance-enhancing drugs.
Yes, definitely. Especially if you consider not just the intensity, but also the profitability. How profitable the sport is. Track and field is
Can
very
get some
profitable.
endorsements with Nike.
Exactly. You know, tennis, those very popular sports are very profitable. And so you have a lot to lose because, as you said, you have your endorsements, you have the titles, and those titles lead to more.
Gold
right?
medals.
Of course. They definitely lead to more. And those are things that that encourage persons or kind of cause persons to look at doping, as you said, to gain an advantage in order to win. But it can't be a win at all costs at all because, as you mentioned, Lance Armstrong, he would have won those 7 titles. But when you compete as a team, you are not the only person who's stripped. Everybody else is stripped as well, right? And it impacts your team negatively when you are stripped of a title, and it makes it very difficult.
Wow. Can you imagine gold medal, all of us standing at the lectern, fair Antigua and Barbuda, and then 2 years after, it could be a relay team and we're all stripped? I would be very upset with that person who used enhancing drugs.
Yeah, and that's even an additional issue. How do you even trust somebody else after that? And if they come back into the sport, do you really have a relationship after that, especially for a team sport? That can be really detrimental to the relationship that the team has.
And every time the person, let's say it's an individual sport, and every time the person wins 100 meters or something, you're wondering.
Yeah, there's
Did
always
they?
of course.
So as much as you're clapping and saying, come on, come on, at the end of it all, the person wins, and you're wondering, okay, are we going to hear anything? But that's why I like my guy, Usain Bolt. Edo's planting, Aki, you know, natural stuff. And my guy, CJ Green, I know he can play around with Mr. Green. Hey, CJ, buddy, how are you doing? I wish you all the best in life. And Joella Lloyd as well, and all the other athletes. We're so proud of you guys. But we're also proud of Launee Richards. She's a sports psychologist, and she accepted our invitation to speak about her career choice on the Paula Show. Coming up next is our last segment for this evening. Stay with us, please. The American Psychological Association said, with the issues of mental health, violence, and activism in sports on the rise, more athletes and teams are seeking the expertise of sports psychologists. Girl, you chose well. You're in demand. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S., the field of psychology is expected, wow, Launee, to grow by 14% between 2018 and 2028, which is much faster than most occupations. Have you seen an increase in the demand for sports psychologists?
In Antigua, I wouldn't say yes. But I have heard more talk of the mental aspects of sports, and I can appreciate that we are beginning to understand that there is not just a physical and technical side to sport, but also a mental component to sport. But as you said, I do hear more about sports psychologists, and they're working not just in sports but in other aspects, and so you see that demand going for persons to have a performance psychologist who is normally a sports psychologist in different aspects or even different sectors.
Very good. Which means that even though you may not be hired as a sports psychologist by a team in athletics or whatever the case is, you can work with organizations to help their people to be healthier mentally and physically.
Yes, yes. Even training in different aspects of organizations.
So let's go to Conrad now. Young right-handed opening batsman injured in a vehicular accident, and his right hand was severely injured. Conrad doesn't want to talk with anyone. He doesn't want to do anything because he thinks his career has ended. I mean, all that I've worked for, it's just gone up in smoke. Poof.
Well, Conrad first of all, he would have to get medical advice to start off with to determine what should happen after. Should he continue to play?
Can he be rehabilitated?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if he's rehabilitated, is it suggested for him to continue to participate in sports at
He
such
has to hold the bat.
Right, especially at a professional level. So after all of that, and he's able to get all that advice, and he gets to go ahead and yes, it's something that can be fixed with therapy, etc. Yes, the sports psychologist comes in, helps you to adhere to your routine, the treatment that has been set up by your physician or whomever, and also kind of move beyond any other, I guess, say mental obstacles that may exist.
He'll have a lot of work to do because he's withdrawn from everyone, your friends and your family, and whenever there's a crisis in your life, you need to be supported by the people who are closer and dearer to you. So now is the time for you to be interacting with your family and your friends, but you're locked away in a bedroom. How are you going to get help? You'll become more depressed.
Yes, I mean, if you have a team and you are aware, but not aware, but you would know that your athlete is injured, you can put some sort of support mechanism in place from the beginning. So you don't want to wait until he becomes depressed or he becomes withdrawn. You want to put something in place. Yes, he's seeing a physician. This is what is happening, and we're going to provide you with some psychological support
And
for
insurance.
this period of time, right? For this period of time, and the psychologist is going to determine whether maybe you need additional support or whether you can continue independently to get better.
And sometimes that's what happens because people are not insured sufficiently. The lack of funds, that's another barrier. That's something else that you have to think about. So all athletes should be insured, you think?
Of course, yes, definitely, especially at a professional level.
Yeah, okay. You have much work to do for athletes and for the general population. We spoke about MBS, gyms, educational institutions, and remember I read that excerpt about the U.S. Army is the largest employer for sports psychologists. So the police, the firemen, the defense force. They all need you. Your service can be extended to hospitals as well, and maybe private clinics.
I actually probably wouldn't go as far as hospitals and medical facilities because in that aspect, unless they're dealing with some sort of physical rehabilitation,
And they have physiotherapists, right?
right, unless they're dealing with that and they need some additional support, then the sports psychologist would, I mean, it's not necessarily required.
So the sports psychologist may not be required in a hospital or
No.
a clinic setting,
No.
but in all the other areas that I mentioned, you can function there.
Yes.
Okay. Now, my dear Launee, you have done an excellent job tonight helping us to become more aware of the function, the excitement, and the possibilities for sports psychologists. Your closing remarks to my people who are watching about how to take care of their mental health and their physical health. I mean, I know you want clients, right? But I mean, we want people to take care of themselves. You don't want to become overwhelmed. So, camera's yours.
I would encourage persons to engage in some sort of reflection or even self-evaluation to determine where you are, where you want to be, and if you need assistance in getting there. If it's beyond the persons who you have available to you, your friends and family, do you need some sort of professional support? And if so, seek professional support where needed, especially to athletes, persons involved in sports. It is important for you to take care of your mental health because your mind is directly related to your body. And if you're not necessarily in the best headspace, then it can impact your performance as well. So it's layered, really. And so we want to ensure that we take care of our mind and our body, especially as sports persons.
Very well. And just in case somebody's watching tonight and would like to have more information from you, would like to have your service, do you mind sharing your number?
Of course. So I'm Launee Richards, and you can contact me at 464-9193. I also am reachable by WhatsApp as well on that same number.
All right, very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have promised for the last almost 8 years, and this is our 16th season, to bring you shows that inspire, entertain, but most of all, to transform behavior. And that is what we did here tonight. Let the transformation begin. Thank you for watching The Paula Show, and have a good evening. Goodbye.
And here are a few secrets from the world of sports psychology.
The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing